Hi, Lori Craig with Splitcoaststampers. Thanks for stopping by today. I wanted to share with you two variations of alcohol marker blending techniques that are great options for blending colors of a different hue in a tight space, such as on these flower petals, or blending two colors in a small space, such as the greens on these flower stems. So the options are both very similar to each other. They're called tip-to-tip blending and palette blending, and I want to show them both to you today. So the first one that I want to show you is the tip-to-tip blending. I'm going to be working first with Copic marker colors YR31 and an R37. Okay. Always work with the lightest colored marker as your paintbrush. In this case, it would be the pale yellow, the YR31. So I'm going to take the caps off of those. And working with that paintbrush in my hand, the yellow color, I'm going to just gently lift some darker red from the nib of the red marker. And so I'm just going to kind of tap my nib right across the red. You can see that I've picked up just a little bit of the red color. And then I'm going to start at the center of my flowers and I'm going to brush out. Notice how I have that red right up near the base of the flower. Pick up a little bit more red. Okay. And what this does is it allows me to get a nice soft red color toward the center. And then I can clean off my paintbrush. See how it's got a little bit of red in there until it runs yellow. And then I can come back and just kind of blend over the top of it. And that red fades out to a nice butter yellow at the tips of the flowers. Okay. I like to work in small areas at a time, so just no more than 2 or 3 petals at one time and then move on. And here I can just keep adding. And I clean my brush fairly often so that I can keep good control over the pigment of the yellow as I'm working with it. You know, the idea is not to combine this yellow and red and make orange. The idea is, you know, to have a red that fades out to the yellow. So very pretty. I would just work my way all the way around my flower base. Okay. It's very important to remember to keep cleaning your brush in between. Okay. And that's tip-to-tip blending. Some people prefer a more traditional palette approach, and it's very similar to the tip-to-tip. But rather than lifting from the red marker, I would actually create a palette on a non-porous surface. So for this video, I just have a piece of acetate. I've got a piece of paper slipped in between just so you can kind of see the difference and know that I'm actually working on a piece of something. This was some packaging for some envelopes that I purchased, but you could use an old stamp sheet of acetate. You could use a CD case. You could pick up an acrylic block if you wanted to. So for the palette method, you'll just take your darker hued marker, in this case the red, and you'll scribble it right on that acetate. Okay. And then have a palette that you can work with. And then you'll just use the same light colored marker, this yellow, and I will pick up red ink with the nib of my yellow marker and continue coloring my flower petals. Okay. I'm going to clean off to the side just like I did on the tip-to-tip. But here you can see I've got a little bit more control over how much ink I am picking up in the nib. And I just let that red feather out to the butter yellow toward the end of the petals. If people have a preference of one of these techniques over the other, most often it's the palette because they feel like they have control loading their brush and seeing exactly how much color of the darker color that they have picked up. So that's both the tip-to-tip and the palette, and I would just continue working my way around this flower image. And this is 2 different hues. I've used the red and the yellow, both in a tight space. This is also a helpful technique when you have small areas where you might not have room for traditional blending of 3 to 4 alcohol markers. For my leaves and my stems, I'm going to be using a YG91 and a YG99, and I am going to let the palette blending do all of the work for me. So very similar to using the red and the yellow on the petals, I'm going to take my darker hue, and in this case it would be the YG99, and I'm going to scribble that onto my palette. And then I'll use my lighter marker, the YG91, as my paintbrush and pick up a little bit of green. And then I will start taking that green to my image where I want the darker greens to show. So where I would have some shadow right here underneath the petals of the flower onto the stem. And then I would work that lighter color out further away from the actual petals. Okay, leaving the darkest color right up near the top where it would be shaded. Okay. Same thing on the leaves. I'm going to start when I pick up that darker YG99 and bring it to the paper. Here, these stamps are wonderful because they give you some indication of where the shading should be right away. So I know when I pick up this YG99 color, right where to take it to my paper and where I want the darkest spots to be when I'm finished with my image. I'll just continue adding the darker color until I get a nice depth that I want in portions of this leaf. And then I will clean that off, make sure I have pure color, and come back in and just feather over lightly with my lightest color. So I'm just going to finish this image and finish my coloring all the way around the leaves and my petals. I'm ready to take it to a card front. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. I wish you a lot of happy coloring and many beautiful paper projects in your future. Thanks for stopping by today. See you next time.